Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So I'm thinking for today we'll probably continue on with another Salesforce Lightning Web Components video. As you can see here, I do have a playlist and they kind of build off of each other, so feel free to check that out. Consider subscribing if you have not already done so. But yeah, so today I'm going to make a video on a Lightning Web Component getters. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. Right here in my VS Code, I already have my project set up. I have a Lightning Web Component called LWC Getters Demo already created. I am connected to my Trailhead org. Like I said, if you're not very familiar with any of this stuff, just feel free to follow that playlist that I showed at the beginning of the video. It basically will go through everything from the beginning. But yeah, so to start us off, what are getters in Lightning Web Components? Well, I'm going to assume you have no familiarity with getters at all, whether it be in any other programming language. So basically, a getter at the most basic level basically is what it sounds like. It's a getter. It allows you to get some property or values, or it allows you to retrieve some value that you computed based off some other properties or some other conditions that you might have had. So I know that sounds kind of abstract, and you might be asking yourself, if you already seen my other videos, why do we need a getter? You know, why could basically just, as an example here in my class, we could just define a property, right? Like, for example, we could just say something like salespeople is equal to some string, right? And we could just reference this in our HTML using our funny looking brackets here, something like salespeople, right? We could do that, and you would be right in saying, yes, we could retrieve the value of this property just by doing so. Now, there are reasons why you would want to use a getter instead of doing it this way. The first one is, let's say that instead of just retrieving the value, you wanted to do like some arithmetic, right? So for example, instead of saying salespeople is just a string, let's say instead of that, it's an array, and it's actually an array of objects. So very quickly, what we could do is I'm going to define two objects inside of this array. The first one, let's open it up. Let's say it has a value or a key called position. And let's just give this a position of 1. And it has a name, I guess. So a name, and this one we'll call it Joe. And then what we, I guess, really care about in this example that we've gone into is we're going to have this key called sales, and it's actually going to have an array or a value of an array. So we'll give this a 50 and then maybe like a 69, and I think that's enough. And I guess let me go ahead and copy this and paste it into here. So we have two to reference. Position is kind of just like index, if you can kind of think of it in this scenario. And name, obviously we have to go with mama. And for sales, let's just go ahead and do the classic for 20 here. So now, if we wanted to do some arithmetic, for example, basically just doing a simple math, like let's say we wanted to sum up the top salesperson's sales. So it would be like something like 50 plus 69, right? Well, we actually have a few problems here. This expression right here doesn't allow us to reference indexes from an array, right? We couldn't do this. And as you can see here, we're already getting yelled at by the HTML interpreter or whatever it is, saying that we can't do that. It's an invalid expression. So that's kind of the first problem. But, you know, you might say, well, that's not a big deal. We can create another property and call this top salespeople or person or something, right? And then we can just say this is just equal to salespeople, and then grab the first index, because I guess we're going with the assumption that the first index has the person that is the top salesperson, and then the second index is the next person after the next sales leader after that, if that makes any sense. So we can go ahead and do something like, you know, get the first index, and then we want to grab the cells like so, right? Something simple like that. And I guess, yeah, we could do that. But if you wanted to add them, well, we would have to do something funky, like perhaps use one of those JavaScript methods that allows us to add up everything in one go. So perhaps do something like a reduce. And I'm not trying to get too complex here. The whole point is not to teach JavaScript concepts in this specific tutorial, but essentially we can use the reduce method on an array. And what the reduce method allows us to do is basically it allows us to take in an array of elements and then do something to it to reduce it quite literally to one value afterwards. So essentially we can reduce this array to just the sum of the entire thing. To do so, the reduce takes in two arguments, parameters. I always forget which one it's called. The first one is we can call an accumulator, and the next one is just the current variable or current value that we're iterating through. So I'll just call this current value, and then we can go ahead and do something like an arrow function. And again, like I said, I apologize if you're not too familiar with JavaScript, but the whole point is just kind of show very quickly the limitations of referencing properties directly in the HTML. But anyways, so we want to go ahead here and do is say arrow function, do basically add the accumulator. So basically the accumulator contains, essentially the accumulator will contain the result of this expression that we're doing here. So we're going to say the accumulator is equal to accumulator plus the current value, like so. And then there's also this other thing that basically says what is the number you want us to start off with. As you can see here in this little description, what is the initial value? We just want to start off with a 0. So essentially this complicated kind of looking thing is saying we want to reduce this cells array to a single value. We're going to start off with an accumulator, and that accumulator starts off with 0 and the current value that we're iterating through. So you can kind of imagine this as basically just a fancy for loop. It's going to go through this an array. The first go at it, we're at 50 right here. Our accumulator is assigned to 0. A current value has 50, so it basically is going to be 0 plus 50. So our accumulator is now 50. Then the index moves to the next one, which is 69. So now it's 50 plus 69, which you can see here. So it will basically add that up. Once it is done, it just returns that 50 plus 69 addition right here. So basically top salesperson is going to have 50 plus 69, whatever that thing is. It's like 119 or something. So we should probably call this top salesperson sales or something along those lines. And then now we can go ahead and basically put that here, right? So we can just say, give us the top salesperson sales, like so. That would work to basically bring it back to the person that's trying to be too clever. This would work 100%. There's nothing wrong with doing so. And like I said, this would 100% work. And I guess we can kind of go ahead and just demo this just to kind of show that this is, I guess, kind of a viable solution instead of using getters. But it should probably show us at the end why getters are pretty useful. So let's go ahead and display the top salesperson sales, and then perhaps also like the top, I guess just the name of it. So the name of that person. So top salesperson, like so. And here let's just go ahead and grab the first element's name. So we're going to say this dot sales people, grab the first element and just grab the name, and that's what we're going to return. So this should have the name of Joe, and that should have just the total value of their sales. So nothing too complex. Back here in our HTML, and I know we haven't really talked about like the Lightning design system and all the elements and tags that we can kind of get for free. If you feel inclined to look into it, you can go to lightningdesignsystems.com or just Google it. And here you can kind of see a bunch of different components, and you can basically kind of copy and just get like nice styling right off the bat. I am planning to make a video on that at some point, but today is not the day. So instead of doing so, I kind of already cheated a little bit and went ahead and designed something pretty simple, which I'm going to go ahead and kind of just copy and paste here. It's nothing crazy. We don't really need to worry too much about it. All we need to see here is essentially we have the couple paragraph tags to just reference those values, those properties that we just created. So top salesperson and top salesperson sales, which are these things right here. And this is a button, which we'll kind of get into a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and just comment this out. But anyways, so once we have that and our XML, what I already gone ahead and did is I set the is exposed to true, and then I just set a target of the homepage, so we can basically just add this to a homepage and kind of just see how it works. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is with that, I'm going to go ahead and right click on the LWC Getters demo component and just deploy this source to the org, just so you can kind of see what we're kind of working with right now. Once that is done, let's go ahead and go into our org, very quickly. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the app launcher, and let's just launch the sales app because that's probably where it makes the most sense to plop this out. We're on the home page right here, which is fine because that's exactly what we exposed the Lightning Web Component towards. Let's go ahead and click on the little pencil icon, or actually, no, sorry, the cogwheel right here, and click on Edit Page. And essentially, we're just going to plop that component straight onto the home page. As you can see here on the left-hand side, I'm going to scroll down to where we have a custom component. I'm basically just going to drag this to the top corner right here, as so. Let's go ahead and click on Save. Let me go ahead and exit out and refresh the page. And as we can see here, we have our little component. The top salesperson is Joe, and they sold $119 of stuff. So it's working as expected, right? Now, let's kind of get into the whole point of why a getter is useful. All right, so let's say in this example that we wanted to provide the user, I guess, some way to change the top salesperson. Yeah, it's pretty simple, right? So what we could do in this case is perhaps just create a function that allows the top salesperson's name to be changed, and then have a button in the HTML that actually causes that change to happen, right? So yeah, let's go ahead and just do that. So let's create a method or function called update top salesperson, like so. And inside of this, and I kind of already lied, I said let the user do it, but because it's not really important to actually show this functionality in this specific video, we just want to actually change the name itself and then see why getters are important. Let's go ahead and just do that, right? So like I said, we don't want to let the user do the input. We'll just do it ourselves. So we're going to say this.salespeople, grab the first element, which is position 1, and then let's go ahead and change the name to something like Joe Mama. Pretty simple, right? And let's go ahead and actually log this out into the console. So let's do a console log here. And because we're fancy JavaScript users, let's use the backticks right here. And let's just say before click or something. And let's go ahead and make use of this funny syntax to reference a property. So we're going to say this.salespeople, like so. Basically, I just want to see the name. Basically, I want to see the name change, right? So we're going to log one before the change and then log it again after this change. So this won't be after click, like so. Essentially, when the user clicks on the button, we're going to log what is currently in memory and then make the change and then log again what is in memory to basically verify that it actually changed, right? So with that done, let's go ahead and go into our HTML. And as you might have guessed, I already had that button right there that basically does all the work. Like I said, I'll make a video in the future going over the actual Lightning design system because it's probably important to do so at some point in the future. Let's go ahead and format this so it doesn't look so bad. And then once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and deploy this to the source org, give it a few seconds, and there we go. As soon as it's done, let's go ahead and refresh this. And here is basically the moment of truth. The reason why getters are so important. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the console and pay close attention to what is happening right here. Let's go ahead and click on the button to make that function fire. So we click the button, and as you can see here, before the click, our name was Joe, and then after the click, the name was changed to Joe Mama. But as you can see here, the top salesperson's name, at least in the HTML, is still stuck at Joe. And the whole reason for that is if we go into our JavaScript here, the function did change this element right here, 100%, but the top salesperson right here does not get re-rendered, if that makes sense. And I guess just to kind of like take any doubt out of the mind, if you watch my previous video, you might be saying, oh, well, yes, it changed, but we didn't tell a Lightning framework to observe the changes to this array, and you would be correct. So let's go ahead and do that by importing the track module here, and then just putting it right here. So we're basically saying now, and again, I do recommend you to watch my previous video on the track decorator, but by doing this, we're telling the Salesforce framework, hey, observe changes to the salespeople array. You only have to do this for objects in an array to observe changes at a deeper level. You don't have to do this for primitives, which is basically just like a string, like how we have here. But even in this case, if we were to go ahead and deploy this source to the org, the top salesperson will not be updated. because the issue here is this is getting updated when it's clicked right here, but this is assigned and initialized once, right? And it's not going to be updated because there's no way for it to be updated. Sure, this changes, but this essentially is staying the same, and the framework has no way to knowing that it actually changed, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and essentially what I'm getting at is this function right here caused this to change, right? And even though this technically does reference this here, which did itself change, it's kind of weird. I guess you can say top salesperson is still just top salesperson, right? Yeah, let's go ahead and go back to our org, refresh it, and I can go ahead and click this one more time. And as you can see here, this still does not update. Joe is still just Joe. And essentially, this is the reason why we need getters. Getters are basically a special type of function that will re-render anytime a property is recomputed or changed, if that makes sense. There's not much else to say aside from that. Let's just go ahead and create one. So to define a getter, you start with the get keyword, and then you can give a name, any name that you prefer. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of copy the name here. So we're going to say get top salesperson, and it's a function. So open this up. And now what we can do is basically just get rid of that. It's right there. And just let's return something. So let's go ahead and return just the top salesperson's name. Basically the same as we had before, but now it's wrapped inside of a getter. And now if we go ahead and deploy this to our source org right here, and we go back into our org and hit the refresh button, if we now go ahead and click on the button, you now see that the top salesperson changed to Joe Mama. So yeah, essentially the getter, like how I said, is just a function that when something changes, or rather the property changes, it will basically go ahead and get it again and return it back to the HTML if it's referenced there, if that makes sense. I know I'm explaining this very badly, probably worse than I usually explain in my tutorials, but like I said, there's not much else to explain, and it's not really that complicated. Essentially, all you need to know is a getter just goes ahead and gets something anytime a property is changed or recomputed or whatever it might be. In this case, because the user clicked on the button that caused the this.salesperson first element's name to change, it caused the getter to refire and recompute its value. Hence, HTML was able to capture that change and show it to the user. Now, the track element is still very important in this case because we still need to tell the Salesforce framework to observe changes to an object, or an array, in this case, an array of objects, actually. If without the track decorator here, I'm pretty sure this would not work here. I could be wrong about that. It's been a while since I've tried doing things like that. And essentially they're returned and recomputed anytime the property changes, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Ideally, if this was an actual real application and salespeople was not just a static array of objects, if it was perhaps maybe you're retrieving like your contacts that are salespeople or something, and or leads or whatever, you would want to make use of getters so that things get recomputed anytime that things change. Also, perhaps this computation of the total sales might be a good idea to be put into its own getter as well, if you want to see how that's done. It's not too complex, right? Basically just kind of copy and paste this here. So now anytime that, let's say for some reason, their top sales numbers changed, well, it will be recomputed because it is now a getter. So like I said, I do apologize if I explain this more worse than I normally do, but feel free to leave any comments or questions down in the comment section down below. I always try to get back to you guys as much as possible. Feel free to suggest any video topics that you want to see covered in the future. Do consider subscribing if you found this video useful, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.